Next, we will begin today's teaching on the Vimalakirti Sutra. It is raining, isn't it? Is that a car I hear? The window was left open, so the sound of the car is coming in. Please close it properly. We are currently studying the Vimalakirti Sutra. The teaching will last about 1 hour. If there are no emergencies, I hope that everyone, especially the tourists and sightseers, who may have never heard the Dharma before and just joined us, will stay. During the class, the views of Vimalakirti, the layman, can be quite profound. If you find it difficult to understand or follow, leaving in the middle of the session might be disruptive. Those of us who listen to the Dharma regularly would never leave early. Even if they are ill or have traveled from a very long distance, they take this seriously to ensure the lineage is not broken. Everyone arranges their own transport and arrives with great sincerity. So, for those who did not previously understand the importance of lineage, it is best not to come and go while the teaching is in progress. Recently, we may have started using video for today's session. Some of our platforms require an update. Because of this, after a short while, some online listeners might only be able to hear the audio. This might happen in a couple of days. There may be some changes starting next week. Whether it is audio or video, both are fine. As long as you understand the meaning of the Dharma, that is what matters. Even without a video feed, it is perfectly fine. In fact, without video, it is out of sight, out of mind.
Denip Jordan de Gitan than by Nevan Korlaka, Nevan Kulotan Batramami Petrape Nander Sonsi, Nevan Kurti Sora, Jordan the Daktivetan by deep, Jordan Jam Chibur Mufto, Dejislatin, Jordan the Gumber Sandia, Gumbran Saratir Signa, Gerlon Nishi, Stone Option, Jordan de la Mozart, Jordan de Gitron the Mamchiki, there Niv Dala Dakalava Termchi, Dalan Dirkitim Shazo. Somebody Koro, Dagni, Stonala, Shonte, Mozani, Jordan de Gitron, the Mamchina, Sedan the Manivan Korti, Chuki, Darchak, Niki, Tetsum Sarte, Darchak, Ni, Stonale, Shonji, Jim Chine, Jordan de Gerlon Terni, La, Chuji, Tamston, Bichok, Terra, Lazambachama, Petrakbam Chine, Tel, Ter, Daglan, Dirkitim Chiso, Somebody Nivan Koro, Chuki, Gerlon, Dagni, Stona. Ti shir tamdam mafshater nyoba chanda mafsha varandagni kirtongan yopa surchi zambani kor tongan nana magne shirur tayang mampo gni meprayang magne so te chifshir jena chondan de kipkap sarwa sem kane nyomo ba sem kane nyomo so sem number shan ver number takbar kyoro jison bishirde zambani kor sem nana yang mayam shirur na yang mayang nikayang Mamuso, Semchirtava, Semchirtava division or Tonga Chirtava, Chutamji division, the division nearly on Mandago. Zamba Nivan Kuru, Semji Ramjan Kanimba, Semji Ramjan Kungup, Zamba Semji, number 2, Semji Ramjan, Namia, Kuninyomo or Jirtam, Meba, in Mayano. Meba, Zamba Nivan Kuru, Semchan Tamchi, Sem the T Ramjan, Zamba Nivan Kuru. Kunder Tobana Nyomu, De Merto, a number Mertobana Ramjano, Shinjalo, Pa Kunni, Nyomu Barte, Shinjamalo Bana Ramjano, Dr. Drup Tobana Kunni Nyomu Barte, Dagmepana Ramjano, Zambani and Kurchu Tamchit. Somebody and Kurchu Tamchit. Stieni and Jikin Money Barte, Gimadam, Chendang, Lostago, Chutamchin, Murdo Barte, Kajik Sunday and Mundigba, Chutamchin or Mulam down, Mirgidan, Rate, Young Taba Mayam Tongo, Chutamchin, Cherdada, Zinian Down, Sim Gunder Tobal, Shun. Gandar Tirta de Shibatin and Daranzan Bajishate, Gungatir Taratin, Labra Tarago, Tene Gerlon in Derkichi, Chuzo, Kimdam Donation the Sheriff Dambad, Jonathan de Gindran Zambanam Chotoson, but Zamba New and Corner Tirtazam Mayano. There need the Katerkichi Meso, Gerona taking the Kimdak Yambin Dashi, Markechi, Techi Virgina, Tejang Shaba Martoba, Kungayan, Dis Popa Janchuber, Nibi Nyantu, Shanchu Sanwate, Kanayan, Met. Di Sherib Gisnawate, Jago, Tenegeron, Tesum Sanete, Niet, Stongi, Sambablana, Mepayan, Toperzo, Shanchup, the Semkin, Teni, Gitievetan Batella, Sherm Sarne Terkichi, Semchan Tamchi, Yandertower, Popper, Kirchi. Kirchi, Jim, Shogo, Dis Lat of the Kievetan Bate.
It is okay, just let the child cry. A moment ago, I was reciting the transmission for everyone. If some of you do not quite understand the significance of lineage, it is a way of using the sutras to bless everyone. It is a blessing for your peace, a blessing for your prosperity, a blessing for your health, and a blessing for you to become more and more attractive. Nowadays, people in our world are becoming more and more attractive, which is a good thing. I feel it is also necessary for Buddhists to look a bit better. Otherwise, if everyone around us suddenly becomes very good looking and only Buddhists are left looking plain, that would not be great. I'm also considering this point. I'm not talking about myself. I am thinking about what would be best for all Buddhists. Times have changed, and as they change, if there are no particular side effects for the body and no negative impact on health, then we Buddhists should organize ourselves to become more and more attractive. We should cultivate some merit. Regarding the sutra I was just reciting, we use these texts every day for everyone, just like how they recite certain sutras in Theravada Buddhism. We use them in this way. This is also a form of blessing, right? Today we continue with the instructions of Vimalakirti the layman. We have been listening to the teachings of a layperson this whole time. As lay people yourselves, we monastics find you more and more remarkable. In terms of our monastic views and conduct, we are not as accomplished as lay people in many respects. It should be said that among Buddhists throughout the entire world, monastics are a very small minority, a tiny fraction. Lay people make up the vast majority. Among lay people, those with realization, profound thought, and inner depth, along with wisdom and compassion, are very important. Because they live within lay communities, they can transmit these meaningful thoughts to those with whom they have a connection. Ordinary monastics have left their families and without children as well. Therefore, when it comes to propagating the Dharma, teaching people they do not know, or educating those close to them can present certain difficulties. However, for a layperson, even if they cannot find anyone else to teach, they still have their own children. One can turn the Dharma wheel for them. One can do this before they grow up. Once they are adults, they might not necessarily listen to you, but before they grow up, before the age of 15 or 16, you can turn the Dharma wheel by setting up a high Dharma throne in your own home. Even if others do not recognize your efforts, there are opportunities to share the Dharma within your family. So I feel that lay people have many advantages in propagating the Dharma and benefiting beings. This is not a joke. I'm speaking based on genuine reasoning. If it makes sense, you should acknowledge it, right? I believe many people would agree with this. For instance, a mother, no matter how little wisdom she may have, her children will certainly listen to what she asks of them. They will definitely be obedient. From the age of 3 or 4 up until the teenage years, you have the perfect opportunity to provide whatever kind of education you wish. It is hard to say if monastics have that same kind of access, right? So from the perspective of propagating the Dharma, lay people actually have many opportunities. By teaching the Vimalakirti Sutra this time, I want many lay people to realize that they indeed have these chances to share the Dharma. Although we may not reach the high realization of Vimalakirti, we can still benefit sentient beings in a way that fits our own status and our own level of spiritual practice. Benefiting others in this way is very important. We have already discussed several disciples, including the foremost in wisdom and the foremost in supernatural powers, Mahamoudgalyayana, Sariputra, and Venerable Kashyapa. We also spoke of Subhuti, who was foremost in understanding emptiness, and the foremost in ascetic practices. After Subhuti, we covered Venerable Purna, and who else was there? Venerable Katyayana. Before that, or perhaps yesterday, we discussed Aniruddha, correct? Venerable Aniruddha was foremost in the divine eye. All of these have already been taught. There are still 3 more left. One is Upali, followed by Rahula and Ananda. It seems that in the Tibetan version, this chapter and the following chapter on bodhisattvas are combined into one. In the Chinese version, however, the 10 great Shravaka disciples are all discussed here at the beginning. All 10 of these great disciples were monastics. They were the absolute finest among the Buddha's followers. You could compare them to the top scientists of today, such as those in biology, physics, or medicine. They were like the most elite scientists in their fields. Among the Buddha's disciples, every single one was a top-tier sage. Yet when they stood before Vimalakirti, the layman, their wisdom could not compare to his. This is a point we should consider regarding certain Buddhist principles. If we look at Tibetan Buddhism, there are some teachers who remained lay people, yet served as Vajra masters for monastics. They even served as abbots for monastics. Such cases exist within the monasteries. Looking back at history, this is quite clear. In some schools of thought, many of the founding masters were lay people. However, for lay people to hold such positions, some in the Sravaka tradition feel this is very inappropriate. They believe it is very unreasonable for a layperson to serve as the head seat or as a teacher for monastics. To them, that is quite illogical. From the perspective of the Sravaka tradition, this view is indeed understandable. When we study the Vinaya, including the Theravada and Han Chinese traditions, and specifically the Pratimoksha of the Vinaya school, the status of a monastic is indeed considered the highest. However, in the Tantric tradition and the Mahayana exoteric tradition, there are different perspectives on this. So by studying the views of Vimalakirti, the layman this time, everyone should try to broaden their way of thinking. Otherwise, if we only study one school and ignore the rest, we will not fully understand the complete meaning of the Buddha's sacred teachings. This is a point everyone should reflect on deeply. Please contemplate this thoroughly. Now we have already covered 7 venerable disciples. By the way, please turn off your mobile phones, all right? Sometimes we have children crying, and other times it is a phone ringing. There are many more tourists visiting recently. When there are more tourists around, classroom discipline can be a little difficult to maintain. Among those who reside here long term, it is not always possible for the elderly or children to stay permanently. After all, this is a Buddhist academy. Staying for a short time is fine, such as visiting as a tourist or circumambulating the mandala. That is perfectly acceptable. However, please try not to have too many young children here in the future. I understand it is currently the school holiday period, so it is acceptable if children come along with their parents. In principle, even if it can be noisy when children listen to the Dharma, it is still very important for them. Exposure from a young age matters a lot. So when parents bring their children on pilgrimages to monasteries or have them listen to teachings, it is a very significant experience. They might not fully understand what is being taught, but the exposure leaves a lasting impression on their lives. This impression and the positive habitual tendencies created can stay with them throughout their entire life. So regarding the discipline here in the classroom, I just wanted to mention that briefly. We have taught 7 venerable ones before. Today we shall discuss Venerable Upali. Venerable Upali. In Tibetan, he is called Nyewa Kor. He is the foremost in upholding the precepts and is highly accomplished in the Vinaya. He is a venerable one recognized as the foremost in keeping the monastic rules. When we taught the treatise on the 3 vows or the Dharma Sutra, this was also mentioned. After the Buddha passed into nirvana, at that time the Dharma was compiled by 3 venerable ones. The Sutra Pitaka was compiled by Venerable Ananda. The Abhidharma Pitaka was compiled by Venerable Kashyapa. The Vinaya Pitaka was compiled by Upali. So he is one of the 3 great compilers of the Buddha's Tripitaka. Upali is truly outstanding in the area of the Vinaya. According to the Vinaya of the Sarvastivada, not only is he foremost in upholding the precepts in this life, but even in a past life in the presence of a previous Buddha, he was also foremost in upholding the precepts. The reason for this is that his master at that time was also the foremost in upholding the precepts. Later, he himself also made an aspiration, saying, "May my precepts be pure in life after life." And afterward, he also vowed to be the foremost in the precepts under the teachings of Sakyamuni Buddha. He made such an aspiration. We see this in the commentaries of some great masters, such as the Forest of Gems in the Garden of the Dharma. These texts contain many stories about Upali. At first, Upali was part of the Sakya clan. His social caste was relatively low. He specifically served the princes and young nobles of the Sakya clan as a barber, regularly cutting and styling their hair. According to the Indian caste system of that time, this was a relatively low status. Later, when princes like Ananda and Aniruddha were preparing to take ordination, he escorted them to the location. When they arrived, they reached the Buddha's place. The princes gave him all their gold, silver, and jeweled ornaments. They said, "Thank you very much for safely escorting us to our destination." Then they sent him back home. At that time, he thought to himself, "Such outstanding princes are all taking ordination before the Buddha. Why should I continue as I am when I'm of low status? I should also take ordination." Later, he hung all his gold and silver ornaments on a tree and went to find the Buddha himself. When he went to the Buddha, unlike those like Ananda, who did not have particularly sharp capacity, he had strong karmic conditions from his previous lives. The Buddha welcomed him with the words, "Welcome, bhiksu," the opening ritual, and he was ordained in a very short time. Immediately after ordination, he attained arhatship. At that time, in order to crush the arrogance of the other princes, the Buddha performed various rituals and ceremonies where he had Venerable Upali seated in the highest position. At that point, others like Ananda were quite unhappy. They said he was previously of very low status. He was just the person who used to cut our hair. We absolutely do not want to prostrate to him now. Furthermore, Venerable Ananda and the others had to be assessed, and only took ordination gradually at a later time. But Upali had the opportunity to ordain very quickly before them, and so his seniority was already very high. Some of our own monastics experienced this as well. They might have been ordinary lay practitioners within the association, and then they arrive here and take ordination immediately. Once ordained, they become Dharma masters or administrators. Then some of the people under them feel a bit unhappy. They think he was just a layperson before. I knew his situation very well back then. How can he be managing our place now? So there is some reluctance to follow. At that time, the others were reluctant to respect Upali. But the Buddha said that in his teaching, the Dharma knows no high or low. The Dharma has no distinctions based on worldly status. Whoever is foremost in precepts and realization is the senior. Then he had those princes prostrate to him properly. At first they were very unwilling. It was hard for them because he was previously just a Baba serving them. Suddenly he had become the senior bhiksu. The Buddha also valued and appreciated him greatly. Eventually the members of the Sakya clan also prostrated before him. Gradually they accepted it. The Buddha did this specifically to crush their arrogance. That is one such story. In any case, Upali is truly outstanding. Because of the habits from his previous lives, his conduct and precepts were very fine. He was also very skillful in his methods. Once there was a bhiksu in a monastery who was ill. He had been sick for 6 years. Upali wanted to help find a cure for him. The bhiksu said, "My illness is not easy to cure. It can only be cured by going against the Buddha's teachings." Upali asked, "What do you mean?" The bhiksu replied, "I used to especially love drinking alcohol. I have been ill for 6 years now, and it is simply because I stopped drinking. If I were to drink again, my illness would surely be cured." Then Upali immediately ran to the Buddha. He said, "There is a particular bhiksu. This bhiksu is quite seriously ill because he has not been drinking. I want to find a way to give him a little alcohol. Is that all right?" This story should be in the Forest of Gems in the Garden of the Dharma. You can have a look. The Buddha said, "Actually, the Dharma I teach is taught entirely to treat the illnesses of body and mind. Use your own judgment." Then Upali got some alcohol for him. He mentioned that 5 units of wine were to be drunk. He then provided the alcohol to the bhiksu, telling him to regard it as medicine. Now, some people who like drinking might say, "This is an offering item. Let me offer it at the mandala, or let the teacher bless it so I can drink a bit. I will regard it as amrita or as medicine," and so on. Perhaps there is some basis for this. I am just kidding. I cannot really say this. Otherwise, you might all start drinking tomorrow. Later, that person's illness was indeed cured. And the Buddha praised Upali, saying that you use skillful means to benefit beings. Later, it seems that person attained a noble fruit, and he no longer wanted to drink alcohol at all. Once one attains a noble fruit, the manifestations of afflictions are gone. Later, the Buddha also praised some of Upali's other conduct. The Buddha said, "You are to propagate my precepts well." There are a great many stories concerning Venerable Upali. When we open the Vinaya Pitaka, or open certain exoteric textbooks, we find many accounts. Some have been mentioned before. Perhaps some of you remember them. But since we discuss so many things, not everything is necessarily retained. In any case, Venerable Upali is just this kind of person. The Buddha then told Venerable Upali, "You go inquire about Vimalakirti's illness." Then Venerable Upali addressed the Buddha, "World-honored one, I am the same as the others. The 7 before me have all failed, so how can I succeed? I'm even less capable." There are things in my past that are even more difficult to speak of. He said, "World-honored one, I dare not accept your instruction to go inquire about his illness." Why? He recalled something that happened in the past. There were two bhiksus who had violated the practice of the Vinaya. They had committed fundamental serious misdeeds. Because they were both especially ashamed and embarrassed, they did not dare to ask the Buddha. Then the two of them came to ask me. Wow, this tea is quite bitter. Too many tea leaves were added. Just use a little bit less. Previously, when feeding horses, this kind of tea was often brewed like this. Sometimes they do it on purpose. At that time, two bhiksus had broken the precepts. I saw this in a commentary on the Great Samatha and Vipassana. I'm not sure who wrote it. It explains how it happened. How exactly did these two bhiksus break the precepts? It seems they had built a hut in a secluded place and were meditating inside. One morning, one of the bhiksus went outside for a walk. He went out to walk or to practice. While he was out, the other bhiksu was somewhat drowsy. Perhaps his clothing was not particularly tidy while he was sleeping inside. A woman who was collecting firewood came up the mountain. She saw a hut with the door open. She suddenly went in to take a look. After looking inside, certain desires for the opposite sex arose. Since that bhiksu was quite dignified in appearance, an impure relationship eventually occurred. At this moment, the other bhiksu came back. When he returned, the woman began to run away. After she ran, the bhiksu wanted to find out exactly what had happened. So he started chasing her. As a result, the woman accidentally fell from a cliff and died. In this way, one bhiksu committed sexual misconduct and the other committed killing. So at that time, the two of them were deeply saddened because their practice in the secluded hut had failed. Sometimes, when adverse conditions appear, things happen that were never part of one's original intention. These occurred without much thought. In just one morning and a short amount of time, both individuals had encountered obstacles in their practice. Since both had broken the precepts, it was hard for them to speak before the Buddha, and they did not dare to. The reason they did not dare speak was firstly because the Buddha was very majestic before the assembly. Many people did not dare to speak lightly. And secondly, the Buddha is omniscient. He knows the truth of all dharmas. So if they directly sought guidance from him, it was very possible that he would rebuke them before everyone. Then they would have no chance of redeeming themselves afterward. They considered many factors like these. Thus, they did not dare speak before the Buddha. Originally, they wanted to properly confess before the Buddha, but when they came before him, they did not dare to say anything. Finally, they found out about Venerable Upali, who is foremost in upholding the precepts, and they started looking for him. They came to ask me, saying, "O Upali, we have violated the Vinaya and are sincerely ashamed. We do not dare to ask the Buddha. We want you to explain our doubts and repentance so that we may be relieved of the transgressions." They said, "Venerable Upali, the two of us have deep and heavy afflictions. This time we committed a fundamental offense, and from the bottom of our hearts we truly feel especially ashamed. As monastics, because we have not upheld the precepts well, we feel deeply humiliated. We also do not dare to ask the Buddha about this matter. Is there a chance to recover? Is there an opportunity to confess? We feel we cannot ask him these things, so we have come to find you this time. Please see if you can resolve our confusion and the doubt regarding the fault of breaking the precepts. And please see if you can relieve our regret and grief, and if we can be freed from this offense. Please see if we can still have an opportunity for liberation. Having committed this offense, is further practice still possible? We wish to be freed from this fault. Is there a car coming through the window again?" Just now, as they were too afraid to go to the Buddha, they came looking for Venerable Upali, who is foremost in upholding the precepts. I immediately explained the matter to them according to the Dharma. Venerable Upali, who had specifically studied the Vinaya, would certainly use his own area of expertise. He used the Pratimoksha tradition of his own school to explain it to them. What exactly did he tell them? You now have no hope whatsoever. According to the Vinaya, once the fundamental precepts are broken, it is like a person whose head has been severed. Even the finest physician has no way to restore it. Because once the head is severed by breaking the fundamental precepts, there is nothing left. Once you commit this kind of parajika offense, the evil Dharma has completely overcome you. As a practitioner, you have completely failed in this regard. So in this lifetime, you have no chance. You will certainly fall into the hell realm and experience boundless suffering. Also, the so-called fundamental precepts are like a tree whose roots have already been severed. Then the flowering, bearing of fruit, and sprouting above will never have any chance of happening. He went on and on about many things. He spoke of the boundless faults of breaking the fundamental precepts according to the Pratimoksa tradition. He explained all of this to them. After he finished, as it is said in some commentaries, the faces of these two bhiksus had changed color entirely. They felt there was not a shred of hope, and the two of them were extremely saddened and anguished. Indeed, according to some perspectives of the Pratimoksa tradition, not to mention breaking the fundamental precepts through a parajika offense, even spending one night together with an impure bhiksu would require 60,000 years of suffering in the hell realm. Then for breaking the fundamental precepts, calculated in our current years, one would experience hundreds of millions of years in the Avicii hell, the hot hells, the cold hells, and other such suffering. The Pratimoksa tradition says the faults of breaking the precepts are extremely serious. As the Bhiksupriya Sutra says, for some people, precepts are the cause of happiness. For others, precepts are the cause of suffering. The faults of breaking precepts are truly very great. So at that time, actually, for someone who teaches the Vinaya, if they only teach the Pratimoksa and understand nothing else, it is just like what Venerable Upali taught at that time. According to the faults of the Hinayana tradition, he explained these to them fairly clearly. At that moment, the layman Vimalakirti arrived. He appears every time at the most critical moment. He appeared and said, "O Upali, do not increase these two bhiksus' transgressions. They have already committed the fundamental offense. They are already suffering enough. Their karmic offense is already grave enough. Do not keep piling so much more offense on top of them." By telling them all this directly, they become even more saddened. For some, even the intention to confess may be lost. So in the future, when we truly encounter such situations, whether with lay vows or monastic precepts, even in our degenerate age, it is difficult for all people to keep their practice extremely pure. There are certain difficulties for everyone. Everyone encounters different afflictions in different circumstances. Once these afflictions are encountered, if you say, "You have no hope now, you are completely finished. You have no reason to continue, you might as well give up," that approach will not work. At that time, one should find a way to give them an opportunity for confession, especially when they are discussing these matters themselves. Do your best to offer them comfort, because this is very important. The Mahaparinirvana Sutra says there are two kinds of wise people. First, those who do not commit wrongdoings. Second, those who confess after committing them. There are two kinds of wise people. This is just as it was discussed in the Kshitigarbha Dasachakra Sutra previously. One kind are those who never commit wrongdoing. The other kind are those who, although they have committed it, are able to confess. A fool also has two kinds. First, committing the offense. Second, concealing it. This means not telling anyone, not confessing, and hiding it within oneself. Such people do not even have a shred of remorse. So when we speak of a wise person who never commits any wrongdoing, perhaps other than some truly wise beings, there are none. In other words, these would be the truly noble ones. In this lifetime, those who do not accumulate even a single offense are extremely rare. Therefore, when encountering these situations, one should use skillful means. Layman Vimalakirti does not immediately try to frighten everyone. "O Upali, do not increase these two bhiksus' transgressions." He told him not to keep adding more offenses to them. He then said to Venerable Upali, "You should just remove the transgressions and not disturb their minds. You should right now directly and completely eradicate their offenses. Since they have committed this parajika offense, you should immediately help them remove that transgression. Do not disturb the minds of these two bhiksus." Our Master, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, teaches, "Don't lose your path, don't disturb others' mind." What is meant here is to not abandon your own virtue and not to disturb the minds of others. Here it says that you should directly eradicate the offense. You should right now help them remove this. For these two bhiksus, it is equivalent to certain Mahayana perspectives. For instance, if a person commits a misdeed in a dream and is extremely saddened by it, you should not allow them to keep dreaming. If you wake them from the dream, that is the best method. There is also another method. When they are particularly saddened, do not talk to them about the faults of breaking the precepts. Instead, speak to them of other merits. The Samadhi Raja Sutra also says, if in the midst of a great assembly one sees someone who has broken the precepts, if in the midst of a large gathering one discovers that someone has truly broken the precepts, do not praise the merit of upholding the precepts, rather praise the conduct of generosity and so on. Do not praise the merit of keeping the precepts or speak of the fault of breaking them. You should speak of the merit of generosity. Ordinarily, between keeping precepts and generosity, the former is considered higher. But if one truly cannot uphold the precepts and has already broken them, you should teach them about the merits of generosity. For instance, if someone was ordained and then returned to lay life, what can be done after returning to lay life? Although they have already returned to lay life, they no longer have the opportunity to live within the Sangha. But you can now be a lay practitioner with confidence and a good heart, practicing generosity, performing the 7-branch prayer, and doing the preliminary practices yourself. That is also perfectly fine. It is best not to have incurred any offenses at all. But once an offense has been incurred, because one's own karma is manifesting, in the end, you should still strive to be a person who practices virtue throughout your life. This is very good. So, if we act strictly according to the perspective of the Pratimoksa, it can indeed be quite difficult sometimes. Therefore, when first dealing with some Buddhists, do not immediately say that this or that is not allowed. As I often say, when someone first arrives, do not set the requirements for sitting too high. Gradually and progressively introduce things. In this way, they can accept it. Many people now feel that the threshold of Buddhism is too high. They feel Buddhism has too many precepts. They think the many rules and regulations make it hard to feel aligned with the practice. So many people who want to study the Dharma find it impossible. Of course, does Buddhism have precepts? Yes, it does. And these precepts cannot be arbitrarily changed. That is also not acceptable. Now, it seems that in Taiwan, and especially in the West, some Dharma centers and Buddhist academies are going a bit too far. In what way are they going too far? For instance, regarding the independent conduct of women, specifically the 8 rules of respect for bhiksunis, some Dharma masters hold meetings and then decide to establish modern bhiksunis with modern precepts. This is very unreasonable, because only the Buddha can establish the Vinaya. Otherwise, no matter how open-minded you are, it simply does not work. I once visited a school in America, and there was a feminist who talked to me for about an entire afternoon. She insisted that we find a way to immediately restore the bhikshuni ordination in Tibetan Buddhism. I told her it is not that simple. She said it would be fine to just hold a meeting, find a few people to transmit the precepts, and be done with it. They were primarily speaking from the perspective of gender equality. But I said, certain matters of the Vinaya are not simply a matter of holding a meeting like a corporate reform where you can just decide whatever you want. This is completely impermissible. When the Buddha passed into nirvana, at that time the Buddha also said to Venerable Ananda, in the future, according to the times and the place, certain matters of permitting or prohibiting can be somewhat relaxed. But specifically, because Mara was interfering, Ananda did not hear clearly. So this has always left a sense of regret in the hearts of Buddhists. Originally, the Buddha might have allowed some relaxation and permission regarding certain prohibitions. But whether it is Tibetan Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, or Theravada Buddhism, I hope that regarding precepts in the future, no one will change them, because precepts are established solely by the Buddha and are related to the cause and effect of past and future lives. It is not for us to decide, though we may have some monastic regulations. As for external systems, systems can be changed. Regarding systems, for instance, this place was originally for male monastics, and we had a boundary line in between, a line drawn between men and women, with a yellow cloth in the middle. Later, as the number of women grew too large, we moved it a bit toward this side. That is a line we established ourselves. We can adjust this according to the circumstances. But in terms of the precepts, originally there are 13 types of Sanghavashesa offenses. If we were to add another one now, or regarding the 4 fundamental precepts, if we said they are hard to uphold in some places, and we will only uphold one fundamental precept, this kind of claim is a very ridiculous thing. So in the future, I hope our Vinaya specialists, as it seems the modern style is very popular now, because before the Vinaya rules were quite numerous. Now on the surface one looks like a monastic, but in reality there is no need to uphold any precepts at all. People say to uphold what you can and ignore the rest. This kind of situation is certainly unreasonable. Even when our Guru, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, was alive, regarding the Vinaya, we prioritize the Buddha's permissions and prohibitions, as he knows all past and future lives and cause and effect. We focus on the Buddha's sutras. We focus on the lineage master's liturgies. It is not because I happen to be famous, so I gather all the monastics in this monastery together, and we hold a meeting to vote by a show of hands to reduce or add certain precepts from now on. Just because this era now requires it, we add a few more rules. This kind of claim is truly absurd. It is truly unscientific and does not accord with the Vinaya. I hope that for those who may be too open, it shows we truly do not understand the Vinaya. The Vinaya becomes just a kind of formality before others. The professor I met is from a world-renowned Tibetan Studies Institute, and her contributions to Tibetan studies are very great. But we cannot casually change aspects of permitting and restricting, or aspects of cause and effect. There is nothing to be done about that. For instance, receiving bhiksu and bhiksun vows. If these are casually arranged by us, they do not actually receive the precepts. If they do not receive the precepts, then after all this effort, it is just an outward appearance and is of no use. So this aspect requires some care. Now it seems there are modern-style bhiksus and bhiksuns, including some women's Buddhist academies, where some Dharma masters always want to open new paths. In this case, it sounds quite comfortable. Many modern people also like this. But does this accord with Buddhist teachings? On this point, those who understand the Vinaya, especially those Dharma masters who specifically study the Vinaya school, you should not stay silent because you are afraid of offending people. Clearly knowing it is not in accordance with the Dharma, but only speaking privately, that is not in accordance with the Dharma. This is not in accordance with the Dharma. But whatever you do, do not say I said this. Otherwise, things will be very difficult later. Doing this is probably not very good. What should be said should be said. Whatever attacks may come in the end, it does not matter. Upali explained it in this way. Why? Vimalakirti said, do not increase their transgressions. What is the reason? Because the nature of transgressions resides neither within nor without nor in between. Regarding the fundamental transgressions of the two bhiksus under the Buddha's precepts, when examined from the ultimate level, they do not exist within the bhiksu himself. They do not exist outside, and they do not exist in between either. In their true nature, they certainly do not exist. Sutra on the contemplation of the mind ground says, the nature of all transgressions is like this, arising from inverted causes and conditions through the deluded mind. The signs of such transgressions are originally empty and cannot be found in the three times. All signs of transgression are actually inverted and deluded. They are originally empty in nature. In the past, the present, and the future, across the three times, the nature of the transgression, which is what they committed, according to Master Kuiji, is why he said not to increase their transgressions. Because from the level of its intrinsic nature across the three times, past, present, and future, the three times, if any person in the world has committed a transgression, the past transgression cannot be found. The present transgression cannot be found. The future transgression also cannot be found. Just as the Diamond Sutra says, Sutra on the contemplation of the mind ground also says, it resides neither within nor without nor in between. The nature and characteristics are suchness and remain unmoved. The transgression is not within, not without, and not in the middle. It is suchness and remains unmoved. The wondrous principle of suchness is beyond words, and only the wisdom of noble ones can penetrate it. It is already beyond language and conceptual thought. Only the wisdom of noble ones can penetrate it. On this point, regarding the nature of karmic transgression, indeed it can be found neither within nor without. In our finding comfort and ease in the nature of mind, this kind of nature is also discussed. Some textual evidences are cited here. They speak to the principle that it cannot be found within, without, or in between. And when speaking to Venerable Upali at that time, he cited a textual evidence that the Shravaka tradition itself accepts. As the Buddha said, when the mind is defiled, sentient beings are defiled. When the mind is purified, sentient beings are purified. This is citing a piece of textual evidence, because the two bhiksus follow the Hinayana, and Upali also follows the Shravaka tradition. So when citing evidence, we use what is commonly accepted. This should be a piece of evidence from the Shravaka tradition. He says that when the mind is defiled, sentient beings are defiled and not pure. This involves having discriminating and deluded thoughts. Once the mind becomes pure, the mind stream of beings is also purified. A pure mind makes the land pure. A pure mind makes beings pure. A pure mind makes afflictions pure. There are many such sayings. So this citation is a piece of evidence. This describes the unattainability of the nature of transgression. The intrinsic nature of transgression cannot be found within or without. Then the second aspect is that the basis of karmic transgression is unattainable, because this transgression arises depending on the mind. He says that the mind also resides neither within nor without nor in between. As for the mind upon which karmic transgression depends, how does the karmic transgression arise? It arises in dependence on one's own mind. This mind does not exist within the collection of the six consciousnesses. It is not in external objects or the earth nor in between, so the mind also cannot be found. It says below, just so is the mind and just so is transgression and defilement. All dharmas are likewise in not transcending suchness. This refers to the entity of transgression, its essential nature. Previously it was intrinsic nature, and here it is essential nature, which is similar. The intrinsic quality of the karmic transgression itself is the same. Just so is the mind means the mind is also the same. Karmic defilement itself is also the same. It cannot be found within, without, or in between. The mind also cannot be found within, without, or in between. Karmic transgression is also unattainable. In the Beacon of Certainty, this was also cited before. It says, all the defilements to be purified are primordially pure in nature. Since there is nothing impure beyond this, their nature is luminous and equal. This means the obscurations and faults that are purified are also primordially pure in their own nature. There is nothing impure. Beyond this, not even the slightest impure dharma exists, because its nature is luminous, equal, and empty. When I first came and studied the Beacon of Certainty, I felt this sentence was very beautiful. The entity of karmic obscurations itself is truly nothing. So at that time when I got up in the mornings, I would recite these useful textual evidences repeatedly. The Beacon of Certainty actually contains many profound instructions on purity and emptiness. Mypham Rinpoche composed it at the age of 7, so the essential nature of karmic defilement is also pure. All dharmas are the same. None will exceed the Tathagata and none will exceed suchness. The other day we mentioned that all dharmas are like the Sugata. When we taught the tantric teachings before, textual evidence from the Arya-Ratnakaranda Sutra was cited. So it is said that they do not exceed the Tathagata. All dharmas are completely identical to the nature of the Tathagata. He then said to Upali that when liberation is attained through this nature of mind, using the characteristics of the mind, which some call its nature, once you realize its nature in this way, you are completely liberated. When you completely penetrate its nature, when natural liberation is attained, could there still be any defilement? Could there still be any impurity? This is stated very clearly in the tantric teachings. It is also stated very clearly in the Mahayana exoteric tradition. So many of our Dharma friends, especially those with a Mahayana capacity, are quite numerous. Many people feel, wow, the teachings of the layman Vimalakirti resonate with me so deeply. It is just like how I enjoy eating sweet dumpling. I'm not sure if sweet dumpling really fits them that well. He then asked, when the nature of mind is primordially liberated, is there still any defilement? Is there or is there not? At that time, Venerable Upali said to the layman, I said, no. I said, yes, that is right. No, there is none. When the nature of mind truly attains liberation, how could there be defilement? There is none. Layman, I have more and more confidence in you now. Although I am a monastic, I feel my own practice is not good at all. When you speak like this, I truly feel deeply ashamed. The layman Vimalakirti then continued, the characteristics of the minds of all sentient beings are likewise without defilement. It is exactly the same as this. He said, O Pali, to have false concepts is defilement, and to be without false concepts is purity. This is speaking from the perspective of false concepts. Discriminating false thoughts or discriminating concepts. As Master Dignaga once said, our false concepts are the cause of the three realms. A forest of pearls from the garden of the Dharma also says, the ocean of all karmic obscurations is born of false concepts. All of our karmic obscurations are in fact all born from false concepts. If our false concepts were not so great, we might be very pure. If one wishes to confess, one should seek the true nature. If a person wishes to confess, if they wish to confess their karmic obscurations, they should seek the true nature and rest in it. So for some types of confession, in a somewhat higher form of confession, these false concepts, of course, this is not so easy to do. It might be relatively easy for us to talk about it, and it sounds quite comfortable even though we cannot achieve it yet. Sometimes we say, oh, all false concepts are pure. We should seek the true nature. Saying it this way sounds better, but in reality, we cannot just do as we please. If one has no realization and casually breaks the precepts, saying all karmic offenses do not exist. If one has no realization at all and deliberately commits faults this way, the fault is even greater. This is also unreasonable. So first it is said that false concepts are defilement. The absence of false concepts is purity. Second, he provides a different teaching here. Confusion is defilement, and the absence of confusion is purity. What we discussed before, permanence, bliss, self, and purity, are inversions. Impermanence, suffering, selflessness, and emptiness are non-inversions, or at the most ultimate level, as taught in the previous session, permanence, bliss, self, and purity, or their opposites, are all inversions. Ultimately, the state free from the four extremes and eight elaborations, luminous emptiness and non-duality, that is purity and that is non-inversion. It can also be explained this way. To grasp the self is defilement, and not to grasp the self is purity. Having discriminating false thoughts and grasping at the self and what belongs to the self is defilement. Realizing the selflessness of persons and phenomena is purity. At that time, the layman Vimalakirti continued, O Venerable Upali, all the dharmas are generated and extinguished without abiding. They are like phantasms or lightning bolts. He says here that for all phenomena, at the very moment they arise, they can be said to be ceasing. If we truly observe their true nature, they are generated and extinguished without abiding. Arising and ceasing, it seems to us that a dharma has already arisen, remains for a while and later ceases. In general, when the Shravaka tradition discusses conditioned dharmas, there are three stages: arising, abiding, and ceasing. For instance, a person is born, lives in the world for some time, and finally dies. This is a relatively coarse process. But when we examine it through Mahayana Madhyamaka, we look at the very instant of arising and the final instant of ceasing. How could it possibly abide? Those who have studied Madhyamaka understand this very well. I still recommend that you study some Buddhist logic and Madhyamaka. Especially for young people, you should study them more. Start with the exoteric tradition, such as Madhyamaka, which focuses on the true nature and logic. At the same time, some lay practitioners should also study the Vinaya. For instance, what precepts does a lay practitioner have? And if you are a monastic, what are the specific permissions and restrictions of the monastic precepts? The other day we taught the ascertainment of the three types of vows here. At that time we were teaching the Bodhisattva precepts, the 5 fixed offenses for kings, the 5 fixed offenses for ministers, the 8 fixed offenses for ordinary people. Everyone studied those quite well. So the Vinaya is still very important. Therefore, at our academy here, at the very beginning we require everyone to first study the Vinaya. Then, in order not to be confused about phenomenological terms, not confused about Buddhist terminology and various other aspects, one studies the Abhidharma Kosha. Then, to open up one's thinking, using wisdom, reasoning, and eloquence, one studies Buddhist logic. Then, when proceeding to discuss emptiness, one begins to study Madhyamaka. When discussing the unshared inner world of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, one teaches the ornament of clear realization. Then, speaking of the purity of all dharmas and the profound principle that afflictions are the very bodhi, one teaches the Guhyagarbha Tantra and such texts. Previously, the tantric teachings were taught by only a small number of people. Now, as long as one has received some empowerment and basic conditions are in place, the Guhyagarbha Tantra course is underway. The results are still very good. Everyone indeed has a deeper understanding of the tantric teaching of the equality of pure and impure. In the future, there may also be some unshared Dzogchen teachings. For our Larungar Academy here, on the women's side, it is not entirely clear. But on the men's side, this year, among the Tibetan Khenpos, the treasury of the Dharma Dhatu is being taught. Several Khenpos have been continuously teaching it. I recall that 4 or 5 are teaching it. In the future, we may also, regarding some principles of the tantric teachings for Khenpos, Khenmos, and Dharma masters, may also study them further. In any case, regarding things we do not know, I hope we do not easily slander or easily refute them. Because we ourselves feel that these great predecessors, their wisdom and their thinking, in certain respects, should be far superior to those of us who speak carelessly now. Because now what we see, whether online or in private, those who love to speak and slander, those who love to speak of the faults of tantric teachings or Mahayana teachings, or those who slander masters, they have no real views of their own. They have no real thinking, just some careless empty talk. It truly is like this. If they truly have some thinking and debate based on the truth, that would be fine. But indeed, many people's thinking has also been influenced to a certain degree. So systematically studying and reflecting like this, for every person, including our association's Dharma friends, I sometimes feel a bit regretful. There are so many people joining the association. But those who truly attend class, in terms of the true percentage, many people have not attended class very well. If they are not even attending the current class, as for other courses, perhaps they attend those even less. Including some knowledge we provide for everyone, on one hand, I also feel somewhat reassured, feeling that in an era like this, there are still so many people coming to receive it. But on the whole, I hope Buddhists are not too foolish. Actually, some knowledge can be gained through study and cultivated through practice, and practice is also truly very important. If you have not practiced well, if you have not understood many principles, perhaps some people are indeed the questions that many people now raise, and the things that people do are all caused by not knowing the Buddhist teachings. The overall level of all our Buddhists should be raised. We must continue to learn. On the whole, I used to think before that within the small circle I know there is some difference from before, especially some lay people now are indeed studying in a very solid way. Regarding Tibetan Buddhism and Chinese Han Buddhism, when they raise questions to certain monastics, they have truly become like the layman Vimalakirti. Some monastics do not even dare to answer. There are also some who say that some are studying quite well. Of course, our study is not for the purpose of defeating others or finding fault. Some of us who now study Buddhist logic is for debate. This is also not very good. Winning the debate does not matter. Losing the debate is also fine. Most importantly, you still need to understand the teachings of Buddhism. So, I am not sure what I was just speaking about. All the dharmas are generated and extinguished without abiding. They are just like phantasms. Look at a phantasm. It arises and extinguishes so quickly that it becomes nothing. Whether it is a person you have transformed or a form you have manifested, there is nothing truly there. All the dharmas are generated and extinguished without abiding like floating clouds. In the Tibetan and in some other versions, another metaphor is added here describing them as being like floating clouds. Clouds in the sky appear one moment and are gone the next. We do not even know where they went. They are generated and extinguished without abiding like lightning. If there is lightning in the sky, when did it begin to flash? When did it begin to cease? And where did it go? That is also unknown. Actually, we sometimes use these metaphors for the wealth and glory of the human world, for youth and the affections between people. In many ways, all of these are impermanent. They appear without inherent existence. I believe many people understand this point quite well. We often say the phrase like dreams and illusions, but have we truly thought about it? When we truly think about it, so many things that happen in our actual lives, whether it is your position, your appearance, your wealth, your power, and the retinue you have now, all of these truly are. I sometimes look at some of my previous friends or family members from my parents' generation, and all of them have now left this world. Sometimes looking at the fame and gain that people pursue so eagerly, it is actually just like being in a dream. There is no difference from dreaming. By tomorrow it becomes, just as Longchenpa said, everything of yesterday is like yesterday's dream. Everything of tomorrow is like tomorrow's dream. And everything of today is no different from dreaming right now. I think many of us can observe this for ourselves. This is what it means to be like lightning. Also, the dharmas do not depend on each other. They do not pause. They do not abide even for a single instant. Not even a single thought can abide. The dharmas are all false views. Even what you see appears without inherent existence. So they are like a dream, like a mirage, like the moon reflected in water, like an image in a mirror. They are all generated from false conceptualization. In our actual reality, all these phenomena and karmic offenses, there is not a single truly existent or substantial dharma. Therefore, regarding karmic offenses or deluded thoughts, we should understand them through the 8 or 12 metaphors of illusion. This is very important. There is also a sutra called the Karmavarana Vishodhana Sutra. It seems to have appeared around the 3rd or 4th century CE. It appeared at that time as a sutra. In Chinese, this sutra exists, though it is not very extensive. Inside, it discusses much about how karmic offenses have no inherent existence. It also describes them as being like dreams and illusions. There is a case study told within it. There was a bhikshu named Suradatta. When Suradatta went into the city to beg for alms, a woman saw him and developed some craving. Later, she fell ill. After falling ill, she said that she must see him. Once her mother understood her state of mind, she went and spoke to Suradatta. "My daughter is very seriously ill," she said, "but her illness is mainly because she wants to hear the Dharma from you." Some mothers are quite clever. She said her daughter mainly wanted to hear the Dharma from him. "Please see if you can transmit the Dharma to her. Perhaps once you do so, her illness will be cured." Suradatta believed her and went to transmit the Dharma. Later, due to their many interactions, he eventually broke the precepts himself. He was very saddened by this. At that time, the woman had a husband. The husband found out and was preparing to kill the bhikshu. At this point, a very complicated situation had emerged. So he devised a plan to have the woman join him in poisoning her husband. As a result, her husband died. After that, he felt deep regret. He had previously been a very pure bhikshu, but then he committed sexual misconduct and the offense of killing. He felt extremely unsettled because of this. He felt certain that he would fall into the hell realm. In every situation, he acted like a madman. He kept saying, "I am a being of hell, I am a great sinner," and so on. He kept saying this continuously. Later, he encountered a bodhisattva. The bodhisattva soared through the air and said to him, "I want to teach you the Mahayana Dharma. Do you believe it?" He said that he believed it very much. "I have special faith in you, just as I do in the Buddha." Then the bodhisattva displayed all kinds of miraculous manifestations. He emitted light toward him. He also recited a very famous verse for him. The Karmavarana Vishodhana Sutra says, "All the dharmas are like images in a mirror and also like the moon reflected in water." The dharmas are all images, just as we discussed here, like an image in a mirror. They are also like the moon reflected in water. Ordinary beings have confused minds, distinguishing among craving, hatred, and delusion. Ordinary beings have confused minds, so they discriminate, giving rise to craving, hatred, and ignorance. Dharmas have no action and no location and are pure like space. What is the final conclusion he draws? Dharmas have no action and no location, meaning there is no agent and no object. They are completely pure, just like the nature of space. There is more below, but I have forgotten the rest. In any case, it is a fairly lengthy verse. After that verse was transmitted to him, since he had good capacity, he attained the Mahayana's forbearance of the non-arising. Later it was said that this bodhisattva was a transformation body of Maitreya. As for the bhikshu Suradatta, whom I mentioned just now, he has already attained Buddhahood in a world in the West. He is called Ratnakandra Tathagata. So for those who have broken the precepts, including those who have broken monastic precepts, if they ultimately encounter the Mahayana teaching of emptiness, and if they rely on a spiritual teacher who truly points out the nature of reality to them, explaining that craving, hatred, and ignorance have no inherent existence, then look at Ratnakandra Tathagata. Even before Maitreya Bodhisattva has attained Buddhahood, he already attained Buddhahood in the West. Sometimes in the Hinayana, when we encounter people, whether monastics or lay practitioners, whose conduct is not very pure, on one hand, they should properly confess by reciting the Vajrasattva mantra. On the other hand, if they practice the Mahayana teaching of emptiness and the Mahayana teaching of Bodhicitta very well, then perhaps in your life and on your journey of practice, there will not be very great obstacles. Practice of emptiness teachings is especially useful for your confession. This can be very helpful. Vimalakirti continued telling Upali, "Those who understand this are called upholders of the Vinaya." If you know this kind of principle, whether regarding the essential nature of offense or its substance, and understand the metaphors, such as the 8 metaphors of illusion, although it seems we only have 6 metaphors here, many versions are basically the same. In the Tang translation, just after like a dream and a mirage, there is another one, like a Gandharva city. So there is a slight difference, but the others are fairly similar. If one knows this, then this person truly upholds the precepts. Those who understand this are said to understand well. If one truly knows this, then they can be called one who understands the Vinaya well. As I said, knowing this is the finest way to uphold the precepts. If you know that all dharmas are empty like dreams and illusions, then you truly understand the meaning of the precepts. In different versions, the phrase, "those who understand this are said to understand well," is sometimes translated as skillful taming for those who know this. It is like this in the Tibetan version, and it seems the Tang translation is the same, using skillful taming instead of understanding well. Why is this? Because if you truly know that the nature of offense is as described, then you are the finest kind of tamer. In some other versions, such as the Japanese version, it uses terms like skillful guide or skillful educator. It is something like that, though slightly different. In reality, they all mean the same thing. The main teaching here concerns the precepts. Those who have broken the precepts should not be overly afraid. If you continue to practice, there is still hope. Vimalakirti spoke in this way at that time. At this, the two bhikshus said, "Such superior wisdom." At this moment, the two bhikshus felt hopeful. They began saying, "Such superior wisdom." The Tibetan version says this layman is very wise, because they themselves felt that this layman was indeed very wise. Upali cannot match this. Upali, as a Hinayana practitioner, cannot compare to you. Although the Buddha says he is foremost in the Vinaya, he cannot explain it this way. The phrase "cannot match this" is not as explicit in the Tibetan, Japanese, or Sanskrit versions. What does the Tibetan version say? It says, "Layman, you are truly very wise. Venerable Upali, although the Buddha says he is foremost in the precepts, he is in no way able to compare with you. He could not have said what you just said." In any case, at that time, the two bhikshus had indeed come to recognize the nature of the mind. Although he is very proficient in the precepts, they felt that Vimalakirti was far superior in this area. At that time, Venerable Upali actually showed his fine character. If he had a narrow mindset, he would have immediately stood up and argued his case. He might have said, "Although this layman speaks pleasantly, others may not necessarily accept his views." Instead, the text says, "I then answered." He answered the bhikshus directly. When he answered them, it seems that in the Tang translation he said to them, "There is a sentence there that says, 'You two do not regard him as just a lay person.' In reality, only Vimalakirti understands such principles." There seems to be a passage in between there. I recall such a passage. The Tang translation and the Sanskrit version both have it. The meaning is that I answered at that time, stating that excluding the Tathagata, there is no one among the Sravakas or the Bodhisattvas who can match his eloquence. None can overcome his eloquence for such a felicitous explanation. What is this eloquence of joyful speech? For a very wise person, no matter how much they speak, the words flow continuously and effortlessly. This kind of eloquence is endless. The point is that only the Buddha can truly persuade Vimalakirti. The Buddha can certainly convince him, but aside from the Buddha, none of us Sravakas or other bodhisattvas can out-argue him. They cannot defeat him in debate. His eloquence and wisdom are very formidable. Such is the brilliance of his wisdom. His wisdom is luminous and penetrating. The Tibetan and many other versions use the term luminous. His wisdom and luminosity are truly this powerful. It is just as described. Upali was speaking very honestly at that time. He admitted that aside from the Tathagata, no one can out-argue Vimalakirti. His wisdom is so sharp. His eloquence of joyful speech is truly outstanding. Upali did not become angry. Even though he had been criticized quite harshly in front of others, he might have felt some emotion. But for a wise person, speaking face to face is a good thing. So we should try not to say things behind people's backs. Some people say a lot behind your back while appearing kind to your face. As the saying goes, a basin of fire in front but a knife in the back. That is not a good way to be. It is better to say it directly to their face. Even if they are unhappy for a moment, it will pass. At that time he said, "Upali, though you are foremost in the precepts, you cannot compare to this layman." Yet he still praised Vimalakirti. At this point, the doubts and remorse of the two bhikshus were completely eliminated. They generated the intention to achieve Anuttara Samya Sambodhi, and they reverently prostrated to the layman. This is mentioned in the Tang and Tibetan versions as well. These two bhikshus cut off their remorse and intention to achieve Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi and made prostrations to the layman. Ordinarily, monastics do not prostrate to lay people, but because Vimalakirti was so formidable, They prostrated to him anyway. Please also look at the other versions. There are many versions available now, including Sanskrit and Tibetan. Sometimes I simply do not have the time. Otherwise, I would love to properly study and compare all these commentaries, but my schedule makes it quite difficult. As a result, the teachings I give you might not be of the highest quality. But there is no other way, as time is limited. If you have the time, please compare them carefully yourself. There are many profound principles within them. At that time, the two bhikshus were overjoyed. They generated Bodhicitta and they prostrated before Vimalakirti. They also made this aspiration: let all sentient beings attain this level of eloquence. After all this happened, Upali said, therefore I cannot accept the instruction to go inquire about his illness. When I think back on this event, it still feels quite unsettling, so I will not go. He feels even more humbled. As a bhikshu who is foremost in the precepts, to be corrected like this by a layman was a lot to handle. All right, we shall stop here for today.
Bandara Badma Asadar Bandara Badma Asadar Bandara Badma Asadar